This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. This is a sponsored message. I've been using Anchor as my podcast host for a while now, and it's been a pleasure to use. Anchor offers benefits that most other hosts do not. It's free to use, but it also has a collection of tools that allow you to create a podcast completely within the Anchor website or smartphone app. They distribute your show to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other distribution channels without any additional effort on your part, and you can make money from your podcast without any minimum audience size. So you can use it as a more traditional podcast host like I do, but it's also got everything you need to start a podcast from scratch. If you're keen to give it a shot, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's Monday, February 13th, 2023. Let's talk about the news. From the Wall Street Journal, U.S. and Canada seek to identify latest objects shot down over North America. After a week of frantic tracking and reporting upon what turns out, according to U.S. officials at least, to have been a Chinese surveillance balloon traveling across North America, the U.S. military has shot down that balloon, followed by 2 other high-altitude objects that the U.S. and Canadian governments have said were potential flight risks. Privately, officials in the position to know are saying these latter 2 objects were also balloons, though much smaller than the confirmed Chinese one. There's a chance these were also surveillance craft launched by China or some other government, though they might also be research craft launched by a university, business, or individual. We know that the 3rd of these craft led to the scrambling of both U.S. and Canadian fighter jets, and that the U.S. government increased the sensitivity of its tracking systems following the emergence of that initial Chinese balloon, which means it's probable that we can now see these things more clearly, which is why we are finding more of them, as opposed to there suddenly being a flurry of balloon-based craft hovering over North America. From BBC News, Moldovan government resigns in wake of multiple crises. The government of Moldova, which is located just on the other side of Ukraine from Russia, and which was formerly a part of the Soviet Union, has stepped down after a year and a half of political and economic issues. Many of those issues are the result of Russia's invasion of neighboring Ukraine, which has spiked inflation, increased energy prices, because they used to get essentially all of their energy resources from Russia, and led to a huge influx of refugees from Ukraine. The Russian government has also been upping their aggressive stance toward Moldova, flying missiles from the Black Sea over Moldovan airspace to hit targets in Ukraine, a fairly provocative act that lines up with other reported efforts by the Russian government to destabilize the Moldovan state. Moldova's parliament will vote on whether to seat the now former prime minister's nominee, her former defense minister, as the new prime minister this week. And from the Financial Times, Russia to cut oil output in response to Western nations' price cap. Following a decision by the EU and its allies to put a new price cap on Russian oil, the Russian government has announced that it will cut oil production by about 5%, which is equivalent to about 500,000 barrels a day. This announcement has had a limited impact on oil markets so far, which implies it might be a shot across the bow sort of move, rather than an intended killing stroke. That said, earlier sanctions and limits on Russian energy exports have already caused a substantial amount of damage to the Russian economy, and the market price of Russia's main crude oil export type has already fallen below the $60 per barrel price cap. So there's a chance any Russian response to this new policy will be largely symbolic by default. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com. And you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts at understandery.com.